we were deep into the tax last year. We'll, be into it this year and have the green light to continue to do it. We just want to be building a team that makes sense playing together.
Yeah, Joe, turn that up. Yeah, American Girl. Are you sure? KJ and Dondero, WEEI. Even getting a little Americana flavor here in our lead, and that's Brad Stevens at the press conference for Kristaps Porzinghas. Look, there's a green light to spend money. And Mark, we've been talking about, like, if Dame Lillard is a real piece to fit in here, what gets moved, and we believe it's Jaylen Brown. And I also believe that you have to be in the conversation if you're Brad Stevens, if you know that Miami is the wanted destination and they don't have enough pieces, and then Philadelphia has a couple of pieces that they could move and make that move and then kind of leave you in the dust. You have to at least be in the middle of those conversations about Damian Lillard.
Well, yeah, you have to be, because that's what the responsible thing to do is. You have to call. That's why this report didn't do much for me. If you're the Celtics, you have to call just to gauge what other teams might have to give up if they're going to go after Damian Lillard. So the whole thing about the Celtics reached out, that doesn't mean much to me. I'm just saying, if we're looking at this from a larger perspective, a macro view of it, I just think based on what's been accomplished or what hasn't been accomplished in the structure of the team, if you're bringing in Damian Lillard, we all know why. Because this team hasn't been good enough closing out big games. And for a player that's Jason Tatum, that's awkward to me. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I would feel about that, bringing in Lillard and basically saying and admitting, Jason, you're not good enough to get it done in this spot. We need to bring in Damian Lillard. You do what you can.
But if we're talking Jason Tatum, the 30-year-old, yes. But we're still talking about a young guy. This is where the age does come in, right? Where Damian Lillard yourself as a person coming into the league, like, this is the guy. This is a guy. It's like, who would you listen to? And so I think you would say, I would listen to what Damian Lillard had to say, because I've seen and I'm impressed what this guy does late in games. And maybe I can learn from him and not have to carry the full burden of everybody run to Tatum for the last 3 minutes, because that's what's going to happen. So maybe you say, okay, I would like to have him here because, it's like wide receivers, right? If you're a star wide receiver, you would want another wide receiver on the team just to be able to get yourself into some single coverage. It's the same thing, I think, if you get a Damian Lillard here. Now, my bigger concern about bringing Damian Lillard here is the money is going to clog up the situation badly immediately. Like, you literally have to win next season with Damian Lillard, or it starts to go sour quick, because now the money's bloated. Everybody's going to be getting extended and added on monies to their salaries. And his, I think, bloats up to maybe, is it like 56 at the end of his deal? So again, and keep in mind, you might be looking at a guy who wants out the following year to still try and get somewhere else. So I don't know. I don't think that Damian Lillard has as much power as he thinks he does, because his number constricts him from moving around. Now, the deal that's scary to me is if Philly decides to convince Portland to take James Harden, right? Because now you can get a superstar if you're in Portland. You've got a young crew out there. James Harden can kind of do what he wants to do. And Damian Lillard with Joel Embiid becomes an immediate problem for the Celtics.
Yeah, that would concern me.
Lillard right now he's making $45 million for this upcoming year. Next year, if he opts into his player option, he's making $48 million.
And then I think the year after that becomes 56.
But at the same time, and I don't know if you're saying this, KJ, you can't just bring in Damian Lillard just to avoid him going to a team that you're competing with. I mean, you got to do what's best for the Celtics.
Well, the other side of it is, if you're bringing him in, you're saying we have to win right now. And the Celtics are kind of in that point, because you get to the NBA Finals, then you don't get to the NBA Finals the next year, and you lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. And you say, okay, it can't be a repeat of this year, and it definitely can't be a repeat of 2 years ago. Like, you have to win the NBA championship this year, and you may have to make a move that may make people go, what? But at least you say you made the move.
So then with Brad Stevens saying, yes, ownership has given us the green light, does that mean they have the green light to go into that second-level apron, or does it mean...
This isn't sitting at Beacon Street where you're waiting for the person to make the left turn and then you go through the green light. Green light means green light. Like, you might have to just put your whole foot in everything to say, we're going for it right now.
Yeah, but you can go for it, but how do you go for it the right way? I don't know if bringing in Lillard, I just think there are too many aspects to that move that could disrupt what you already have, and they've been close. And if you make that move, you better be right. You better be right, especially based on, what you'd be giving up in either Jaylen Brown or with the way the defense played last year. And if you move on from Rob Williams, those are big moves. And This guy is older, he's smaller, he is not a defender. You're bringing him in to close out games. You better have that other stuff figured out if you're going to do that.
KJ and Dondero, 617-779-7937, text line 37937. Happy 3rd of July to you. The hot dog eating contest, I thought it was today, but it's not July 4th, that's tomorrow. So we'll get into that as well as the Bruins here in a little bit.
Yeah, and I also want to get into, I want to get into what I think the biggest problem is, and where we're going to get into that too in terms of the Celtics.
Well, yeah, well, here's the thing. Let's say you take Lillard on a 1 year, right? Because if he has a player option after this, 45 a year, but let's say the players you give up are Pritchard. Let's say it's this mix of players you give up that don't include Jaylen Brown. Do you, as Brad Stevens, say, I'm willing to do the 1 year rental at a clear 45 off of my books? I've got some draft picks. I might be able to get somebody else to come in and make a 1 year run with Tatum, Brown, Porzinghas, and with Lillard, and let Lillard walk the next year.
No, I don't do it. I don't think you're balanced enough. I don't think that's a balanced enough basketball team. They need to play defense.
If I feel like right now this team is missing a second big play shooter in clutch moments, and it's going to get me a championship, I might consider doing it for the 1 year, knowing that I'm not giving up a superstar for it, right? If it doesn't mean I don't have to give up Jaylen Brown, and I can have Damian Lillard for 1 year, and then that following year to clear money off of my books, or maybe he loves it here so much that he may be willing to renegotiate depending on, because I don't know what his market demand will be, right? I don't think there's going to be an extension if he comes here. I don't think that Miami has enough pieces to get him there. Philadelphia has some flexibility. So I think, maybe that's something you consider if you're Brad Stevens. If it's win now, and spending is no issue, and you're willing to get off of Brogdon's $22.5 million that you just gave up for last year, that means you're willing to spend more than what you've spent on him. So I believe there is a chance you bring Damian Lillard in as a hired gun for 1 year, and then get off of that contract where it increases considerably.
Nope, I don't buy it. I don't think it works. I think it'd be a big mess.
If it means you get to keep Jaylen Brown,
I don't think it works for a year. Who's going to lead them? Who's the coach?
Joe Mazzulla. Hello.
Yeah, you think he's going to be able to figure out all those superstars? Are you serious?
Yeah, I think so.
We just had a disaster occur after the Celtics won the big series against Philadelphia, and you had Marcus Smart come out and say those things. There is no way,
now,
with respect to Joe Mazzulla, I have confidence that he'd be able to figure that out.
Joe Mazzulla's a company guy, right? He's really a capo, and the bosses are kind of letting him know how things really run. Like Brad Stevens is Don Corleone in this. You know this. Well, and I think probably the first thing that his request to Brad was, I can't have Marcus Smart in the locker room second guessing what I'm trying to do or accomplish. And Mazzulla will have a whole preseason leading up with his coaching staff. This is why I say it's interesting that you find interesting that the coaches that they brought in are all guys who are like one step away from being head coaches. So this is what I think it's a win now situation, that if Joe doesn't cut it early on, and let's say you do have the superstar Joe Mazzulla. All right, Sam Cassell, you're the interim. Run in there. I think there's.
Now you got the assistant coach coaching the team. Well, that's great.
How often is an assistant coach being brought in when they are a finalist for other head coaching jobs?
I understand, and I have a big problem with it, and it makes me really nervous about this team and the prospects of this new head coach or this young head coach.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Don't even worry about what Mazzulla can and can't do. If he can't do it, there are two guys on the staff that are ready to do it. And they probably have a little more cachet with the players, especially someone like Cassell, been in the league, been on your staff at some point in time, worked with Doc Rivers extensively, and all these different things. These guys have pedigrees to be head coaches now. So it's a matter of, okay, the players wanted Mazzulla. You got Mazzulla. But if Mazzulla can't handle who they asked for, we got this guy right here. Because when you hear spending's no option, that says to me that I might do something. And keep in mind, like, look, we both have spouses. We know we've gone shopping for them, right? And you're like, I'm really trying to be responsible, put away some money for something. But maybe if I just break down and go ahead and surprise and buy her this, I can make it up down the road. That could be what Brad Stevens is thinking. That Dame Lillard is suddenly this piece of object or this special buy that he can make to make a run right now. You've extended Porzinghas, so you know he'll be here, and you still have a background crew of core players that are still in their mid-20s. You might just be tempted to do that.
No, I understand the temptation. I just don't buy it. I don't think the head coach is capable of managing that level of roster with all those superstars. Not to mention, KJ, you're going to have a dynamic in place where the best player had to defer to this new guy who is now the number one option late in games, and he's the one that's tasked with closing out games. And then there's another guy who just made second-team All-NBA who's going to have to take a back seat to what this guy's doing. Then you have Kristaps Porzingis, who's an offensive. I know he has a good rim protection.
This sounds like a bomb team if they played with 4 basketballs at the same time.
Yeah, here's the difference, though. Think about when they looked over at the guard position when they've been in these critical times. Who were they looking over at? Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
If you change that face to Damian Lillard, and remember, what was it, Game 5 against Philadelphia where Jason Tatum was setting picks, and you're like, why is the ball not in his hand? Because he was the only guy you felt that could get something done with the ball in his hand. If you get to the final 5 minutes and it's Damian Lillard or Jason Tatum with Jaylen Brown as a third option, that becomes much more dangerous, and you have more say-so than when Marcus Smart was out there last year, believing that he should be part of an option to finish off plays.
Marcus Smart did miss a lot of big shots, but with Damian Lillard, you're giving up a lot of defense that Marcus Smart did give you, whether you thought he was the defensive player of the year or played like it or whatever. That's a big drop-off there. So you got to consider that.
Okay, so then we can't forget that Derek White was brought in at least for some type of comparable. We're not saying that he's level at Marcus Smart, but Derek White is above average guard defender in the league. So if you have an above average guard defender in the league, you still have Brogdon, who has solid defense as well. So you still have guard play in the backcourt that can give you defensive moments. It's just that now you got a better shooter out there in Lillard.
You can make the case.
And I'm a point guard, too.
You can make the case. KJ, you can make the case. I just think, for me, okay, the big overarching point for me is I wish what they did was find a coach. Maybe Ime Udoka would have been that. We'll never know. Find a coach.
But we do know. It's not him.
No, I know. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. We know it's not him. But I'm just saying he didn't get fired because of a basketball issue. That's what I'm saying. He got fired because of something else. So if he was able to stick to just basketball and not skirt chasing, we might have found out. We're never going to find out how his basketball.
It takes two to make a thing go right.
That's right. Listen, I just don't know. What I would have liked would have been for some coach to get the best out of Marcus Smart and to keep Smart here. That would have been preferred to me. Now, do I think the Celtics should have moved on? Yes. I think that was a good move, especially based on what you got back and who you have on the team now. But I would have preferred if somebody could have tapped into Marcus Smart's assets in terms of passing and consistent defense, what he was in Game 1, the beginning of Game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals when he had those 10 assists, and it was beautiful. If they could have tapped into a coach, could have gotten that player to come out and play more often, I think that would have been better. I want a coach, KJ, that can get Jason Tatum to be better late in games, to make the Celtics better late in games. I want to watch Celtics practices. That's what I want.
Well, they're right next door. Right next door. You just got.
I know, but do they get let me in and analyze? I don't know how intense are their practices. How intense do they work on these things, or is it just shoot around and do this and kind of? I don't know. Maybe they're real
Globetrotters. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to buy the Globetrotters thing. Look, here's the weird thing. is don't you think it's KJ and Dondero on WEEI? Thank you so much for being here, getting a conversation. 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. Don't you think that the reshaping of Marcus Smart had kind of been going on for the last couple of years, and maybe it just didn't take with the player? Like, you started seeing the assist, and you're like, hey, the dishing off Marcus Smart looks really good, and then you get into the playoffs. He's like, I'm in the game. I'm going to shoot the ball. Look, at some point, and he's the player that's had the most tenure here.
Because when I take great shots, I'm a great shooter.
See, my thing is, look, at some point it started to feel like Marcus Smart was the guy who still had a job because he's in the union and he'd been there the longest, right? Like, if it's win now, I don't care if you've been here the longest. I don't care if you're allowed to take the longest lunch. I don't care if you believe that the newest guy here gets fired first. If it's about putting up 18 now, you have to make moves that are going to make people scratch their heads. But other people say, yeah, at some point you got to say, this is Tatum's team. We got to move forward.
Well, then if you're going to do that, I would trade Jaylen Brown. If you're going after Lillard, I would trade Brown. I know there is a health concern with Robert Williams, but his contract is good. Yep. And when he's right, he is a force defensively, and I think you need that cornerstone piece. And again, Tatum, if he's recruiting Damian Lillard, this isn't, we talked about the Heat and Wade and James. That's not this. This isn't, KJ, Michael Jordan going after and trying to get in Dennis Rodman. No, that guy was coming in to do something completely different. You're bringing in Lillard, and everyone knows it. We're not going to talk about it openly. Nobody's going to ask Jason Tatum this necessarily, but you're bringing him in to do what you should be able to do as a first-team All-NBA offensive juggernaut type of player. That's awkward to me, and I don't think based on what you'd have to give up, I'm willing to entertain that scenario because I think that could get things a little too messy for what I'd want to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
KJ and Dondero, 617-779-797, 37937, the text line. Thank you so much for hanging out. July 3rd, we'll continue this conversation with the Celtics. Join in. Thanks for hanging out.